The message that wasn't fear. There are many ways to conquer a civilization. The Galactic Council had perfected one. They didn't invade first. They didn't negotiate. They didn't threaten in words. They demonstrated inevitability. For over 4,000 standard cycles, every species that joined the stars received the same message. A transmission. A broadcast. A carefully curated sequence of destruction. Worlds burning. Fleets shattering. Cities erased in seconds. And at the end, a simple statement. This is the fate of those who resist the Galactic Council. Submit and be preserved. No species had ever replied with anything but surrender. Until Earth. Globe showing Europe-Africa the arrival. At exactly 2:12 Universal Time Coordinated, every screen on Earth activated. Phones. Satellites. Televisions. Even dormant military systems. The broadcast began without warning. Dr. Ayan Rahman, a systems analyst at the Global Signal Observatory, was the first to notice something unusual. Not the destruction. Not the alien ships. The pattern. Wait, he whispered, leaning closer to his screen. Behind him, alarms were already beginning to sound. Emergency protocols activating across multiple nations. But Ayan wasn't watching the chaos. He was watching the details. Why is it repeating? He muttered. On screen, a massive alien vessel fired a beam that sliced a continent in half. The footage looped. Again. But not perfectly. Frame offset. 0.3 seconds, Ayan said, his voice rising. His colleague turned. What? The weapon, Ayan pointed. It cycles. Brain the first lesson. Within minutes, global defense networks were activated. Not just to respond, but to record. The broadcast wasn't random. It was structured. Military analysts from dozens of countries began noticing the same thing. Weapon firing intervals were consistent, ship formations repeated specific patterns, defensive shields fluctuated at predictable moments, ground forces followed identical entry routes. It wasn't just destruction. It was documentation. The meeting? 6 hours later, a global emergency council convened. Not political leaders. Not diplomats. Engineers. Scientists. Strategists. People who saw problems as systems. General Elena Kovacs stood at the center of the room. We have approximately 4 months, she said. Silence followed. How do you know? Someone asked. Kovac gestured to the screen. They always wait. The data confirmed it. Every civilization in the broadcast had been given time. Time to panic. Time to surrender. Time to fail. But we're not going to do that, Ayan said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Hear a different perspective. They're not just threatening us, Ayan continued. They're teaching us. Confusion spread. They think this will scare us, he explained. But they're showing us exactly how they fight. He began pointing rapidly. This weapon, fixed cooldown. This formation, creates blind angles. These troops, predictable movement bias. They've never fought anyone who studies them. Light bulb the decision. The room shifted. Not fear. Not panic. Focus. If we treat this like a lesson, Kovac said slowly. Ayan nodded. Then we might survive. Factory, the transformation begins. Within 48 hours, Earth changed. Factories stopped producing consumer goods. They started producing components. Not for one weapon. For thousands. Decentralized. Distributed. Unpredictable. Every nation contributed. Former rivals shared data. Former enemies exchanged technology. Because for the first time in human history, there was no them. Only us. Books learning from the enemy. The broadcast continued. 3 hours of destruction, looping endlessly, and humanity watched, not with fear, but with intent. Students studying a final exam. Microscope educational value, built into story. Human analysts broke the footage into learning categories. 1. Pattern recognition. Humans identified repeating cycles in weapons and movement. Right arrow lesson, even advanced systems follow rules. 2. Predictability weakness. Alien forces relied on consistency. Right arrow lesson, predictability creates vulnerability. 3. Overconfidence bias. The Council reused the same strategy for thousands of years. Right arrow lesson, success without adaptation leads to failure. 4. Data utilization. Humans treated the threat as intelligence. Right arrow lesson, information is power, if understood. Hammer and wrench the first breakthrough. 3 weeks later, Ayan stood in a test chamber. Before him, a prototype material. Designed using data from the broadcast. Activate test, he said. A plasma simulation fired. The beam hit the surface and spread, dissipated, neutralized. It works, someone whispered. Rocket meanwhile, far above Earth. On board the Council warship Judgment of Silence. Fleet Overseer Threxel reviewed Earth's response. They have not surrendered, a subordinate reported. Threxel's expression didn't change. Expected delay behavior. They are not requesting negotiations. Pause. They are increasing industrial output. Another pause. For weapons. Warning the first doubt. Threxel leaned forward. Show me. The display filled with images. Factories running non-stop. Military drills increasing globally. Orbital construction accelerating. They are preparing, the subordinate said. Threxel dismissed it. All species prepare before they surrender. But deep within, a thought formed. Small. Uncomfortable. Satellite antenna the response. 2 months after the broadcast began, Earth sent a message. Not a threat. Not a plea. A letter. Envelope the thank you letter. To the Galactic Council. We acknowledge receipt of your transmission. Your detailed demonstration of military capabilities, strategic patterns, and operational procedures has been extremely helpful. We appreciate the clarity and consistency of your methods. It has allowed us to better understand your approach and to prepare accordingly. Thank you. Humanity. Milky Way silence in the stars. On the Judgment of Silence. No one spoke. They thanked us, a subordinate whispered. Threxel stared at the message. Again. Time. Meant the same thing. Brain realization begins. They are not afraid, Threxel said slowly. No, Fleet Overseer. They are learning. Fire final line, hook for part 2. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Galactic Council realized something had gone terribly wrong. Because instead of breaking a civilization, they had just trained one. The reply from Earth did not cause outrage across the Galactic Council. It caused something far more dangerous. Uncertainty. Fleet Overseer Threxel stood motionless as the message replayed for the 7th time. The translation algorithms confirmed it again and again. No hidden meanings, no linguistic errors. Humanity had understood the warning perfectly, and still chose to say thank you. They are mocking us, one of the junior tacticians said. No, Threxel replied, his voice lower than usual. Mockery requires arrogance without understanding. He turned slightly, his eyes narrowing at the tactical display. These beings understand. The chamber fell silent. That was not a possibility the Council had prepared for. For over 4,000 cycles, the warning had worked because it created a single outcome: fear. Fear led to surrender. Surrender led to absorption. But Earth had produced something else entirely. Analysis. Update on their world, Threxel ordered. A new projection filled the air. Earth rotated slowly, covered in flickering lights. Not city lights. Industrial output. All major production centers have increased activity by 312%, the analyst reported. Military exercises ongoing across all continents. Orbital construction detected, non-standard configurations. Non-standard? Threxel asked. Yes, Overseer. They are not building according to any known doctrine. Of course they weren't. Why would they? They weren't following doctrine. They were following data. On Earth, time had become something else entirely. Not days. Not weeks. Deadlines. Ayan Rahman hadn't slept properly in nearly 10 days. His eyes burned, but his mind refused to slow down. Run the sequence again, he said. On the screen, the alien formation appeared. Ships aligned in perfect geometric precision. Elegant. Efficient. Predictable. There, Ayan pointed. A cluster of red markers appeared. Those gaps exist in every deployment. His colleague frowned. Could be coincidence. Not after 187 repetitions, Ayan replied. The room went quiet. Every second of alien footage had been dissected, categorized, indexed. What had been meant as intimidation had become the most detailed military database in human history. In Nevada, deep beneath reinforced steel and stone, another team worked on something far more dangerous. Dr. Elena Kovac stood beside a prototype device. It didn't look impressive. Just a cylinder. Simple casing. No visible power source. Explain it again, the general overseeing the project said. Kovac exhaled slowly. Their shields operate on harmonic frequencies. The general nodded. He'd heard this before. They rely on stability, Kovac continued. Perfect synchronization between energy layers. And we disrupt that synchronization. She tapped the device. We don't break their shields. Pause. We make their shields break themselves. Testing began immediately. A captured energy simulation mimicking alien shielding was activated. The device was launched. Impact. For a fraction of a second. Nothing happened. Then, the shield inverted. The contained energy collapsed inward and exploded outward. The test chamber vanished in a flash of white. Silence followed. Then someone whispered. It turned their defense into a weapon. Kovac didn't smile. We're not stronger than them, she said quietly. But we don't need to be. 3 months after the initial broadcast, the Galactic Council fleet changed course. They were arriving early. Threxel stood at the command platform as stars stretched into lines outside the viewport. Reason? He asked. Precaution, came the reply. That was the official answer. The real one was simpler. They were no longer certain. Back on Earth, the alert came without warning. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Estimated arrival, 2 weeks early. The command center erupted. Ion looked up sharply. They're scared, he said. No one laughed. General Kovac stepped forward. All units to readiness. Execute Phase 2. Across the planet, systems activated. Missile silos opened. Orbital platforms aligned. Hidden installations powered on. Everything humanity had built in months, prepared to be tested in minutes. Above the moon, space remained silent. Empty. Waiting. Then, reality tore open. The Council fleet emerged. Massive ships, each one a monument to dominance. Thousands of them. Perfect formation. Perfect discipline. Perfect predictability. Mark targets, Kovac ordered. Ion's voice followed immediately. Wait. The room froze. They're using the same entry formation, he said. Of course they were. They always did. Ion's fingers moved rapidly. Upload targeting solutions. Coordinates spread across every system. Not guesses. Certainties. Fire. The first human attack did not come from Earth. It came from everywhere else. Asteroids. Debris fields. Dark space. Hidden platforms ignited. Missiles launched from places the Council had never considered threats. Because no species had ever hidden there before. The first explosions lit up the void. Council ships took direct hits before they even finished formation. Shields flared. Then collapsed. What is happening? A Council officer shouted. Threxel didn't answer. He was watching the pattern. The same pattern he had seen in the human message. Understanding. They targeted the gaps. Someone whispered. More attacks followed. Precise. Calculated. Every strike landed where the Council was weakest. Not random. What? Return fire. Threxel commanded. The fleet responded instantly. Plasma beams tore through space. Human defenses activated. And something unexpected happened. The beams didn't destroy. They scattered. Diffused across strange surfaces. Turned into harmless light. They adapted our weapons, the officer said in disbelief. The battle escalated. Fighter craft launched from hidden carriers. Small, fast, unpredictable. They didn't engage directly. They moved through blind spots, areas the Council had never needed to defend, because no one had ever known they existed. They're inside our targeting arcs, another officer yelled. Railgun fire answered. Solid projectiles moving faster than any Council system was designed to track. Impacts tore through hulls, not by overpowering them, but by hitting exactly where they were weakest. Threxel felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, but the beginning of it. They studied us, he said quietly. Below on Earth, the command center watched in silence. Not celebration. Not yet. Ion stared at the screen. Don't stop, he whispered. They'll adapt. General Kovac nodded. They always do. The difference was, now humanity would too. The battle was not over. It had only just begun. And for the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council was fighting an enemy that learned faster than it did. Far above, in the chaos of burning ships and shattered formations, Threxel made a decision. Advance. His officers hesitated. They're prepared for our standard tactics, one warned. Then we abandon standard tactics, Threxel replied. But even as he said it, he realized the truth. Too late. Because everything the Council had ever been was built on patterns, and humanity had already learned them all. The second phase of the battle began, and this time, It would not be predictable. The moment the order was given, something changed across the battlefield. The Galactic Council fleet broke formation. For the first time since humanity had begun analyzing them, the perfect geometry shattered into something far less elegant and far more dangerous. "Sir, they're deviating," a technician reported. Ion leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Of course they are," he murmured. General Kovac crossed her arms. "Can we still predict them?" Ion didn't answer immediately. On the screen, the alien ships moved, no longer in synchronized patterns, no longer following the precise doctrines that had defined every engagement in the warning footage. But even chaos has structure. "Give me 10 seconds, Ion said. His fingers moved rapidly, pulling in fresh telemetry. Vectors. Acceleration curves. Weapon timing. "They're improvising," someone said. "No," Ion replied. "They're trying to." He highlighted a cluster of ships. "Look closer. They're breaking formation, but their individual behaviors are still constrained." Kovac stepped closer. "Meaning?" "They don't know how to be unpredictable," Ion said quietly. Above the moon, the battlefield shifted into something far more violent. Council ships surged forward in irregular waves. Instead of clean lines, they came in fractured groups, attempting to overwhelm human targeting systems through sheer variation. "Multiple vectors incoming," the orbital defense officer shouted. Missiles launched to intercept. But this time not all of them hit. A council cruiser slipped through the defensive net. "Impact trajectory locked, outside," someone yelled. Kovac didn't hesitate. "Redirect orbital platform 3. Full power." A beam lanced out from Earth's defense grid. It struck the cruiser. But unlike before, the alien vessel adjusted mid-flight. The beam grazed it. Not enough. The cruiser fired. A column of plasma slammed into the atmosphere. A flash. Then silence. In the command center, no one spoke for a moment. "Location?" Kovac asked, voice tight. "Pacific Ocean," came the reply. Ion exhaled slowly. "Minimal casualties," the officer added. "Minimal. But not zero." Kovac turned back to the screen. "They're learning," she said. Ion nodded. "And so are we." The next phase began immediately. "Deploy counter-adaptation protocols," Kovac ordered. This was something humanity had prepared carefully. Not a single strategy, but many. Instead of relying on one system, human defenses began shifting dynamically. Missile patterns changed. Fighter tactics adjusted in real time. Even communication frequencies rotated unpredictably. Every move was designed to do one thing: stay ahead. In space, human fighters engaged. Unlike the Council's precise machines, human craft moved with something different: imperfection. Pilots didn't follow exact paths. They improvised, reacted, adapted mid-movement. To the Council it looked chaotic. To humans, it was instinct. "They're impossible to track," a Council officer shouted. On Threxel's command deck, frustration was spreading. "Why are our targeting systems failing?" another demanded. Threxel remained still. "Because they are not repeating," he said. The realization hit hard. Council systems were designed for perfection. Predictive targeting. Pattern recognition. But humans? Were not predictable. "They're not following any doctrine," the officer said. "They are creating it as they fight," Threxel replied. Then something new appeared on the battlefield. "Unidentified objects approaching," a sensor operator reported. "Small. Fast. Dozens of them. Intercept." "No, trajectory suggests impact." They hit. Not ships, but shields. And when they did, the effect was immediate. Shields flickered. Then collapsed inward. No, that's not possible," the officer whispered. "The resonance weapons. Humanity had brought them to war." One Council destroyer vanished in a violent implosion. Then another. Then another. Each explosion fed by the ship's own defensive systems. "They've weaponized our shields," someone said, voice trembling. Drexel felt it now. Fully. Fear. Distance. "Increase distance," an officer shouted. But it didn't matter. The humans weren't chasing. They were controlling. Below in the command center, Ion watched carefully. "Don't overextend," he said. Kovac nodded. "We hold the line." But then, a new alert. Multiple breach signals detected. Everyone turned. Where? Council ships, internal systems failing. Ion froze. No. Then he understood. They're being boarded. Silence. By who? Someone asked. Ion's eyes widened. By us. Moments earlier. Hidden within debris fields. Human strike teams had launched. Small insertion crafts. Minimal signatures. They weren't meant to survive detection. They were meant to arrive before detection mattered. Inside a council vessel. Dark corridors lit with emergency lights. Human soldiers moved quickly. Efficiently. They didn't hesitate. Didn't explore. They already knew the layout. Left corridor 3 meters, one soldier said. Structural weak point ahead. They placed charges. Not randomly. Precisely. How do you know this ship? One of them asked. The team leader answered without slowing. I've seen it before. He had. In the broadcast. Explosions rippled through the vessel. Critical systems failed instantly. Back in space the ship drifted. Then. It tore itself apart. Boarding team successful, a voice confirmed. Kovac looked at Ion. They used the footage. Ion nodded slowly. They memorized everything. On Threxel's ship. The situation was deteriorating. Multiple vessels lost, the officer reported. Boarding incidents increasing. Threxel stared at the battlefield. Every tactic, every strength, every advantage, turned against them. They are using our victories as instructions, he said. No one responded. Because there was nothing to say. For thousands of years, the Council had believed one truth. That no species could survive their methods. Now they were facing another truth. Far more dangerous. That no species had ever tried to understand them before. Back on Earth, the cost was rising. More impacts. More losses. But humanity held. And more importantly, humanity learned. Every second of combat was recorded. Analyzed. Improved upon. The war was no longer about survival. It was about evolution. And humanity was evolving faster than the enemy. On the battlefield, Threxel made another decision. Prepare communication channel, he said. The officer hesitated. Fleet overseer? Threxel didn't look away from the destruction. We need to understand them. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council was not trying to conquer. It was trying to learn. But unlike humanity, they were already too late. The communication channel opened reluctantly, the Council symbol flickering onto the main screen in Earth Command. Threxel's 6 eye stalks swiveled slowly, scanning every human face, every display, every tactical feed. His voice, translated into flat English by the AI, carried both authority and incredulity. Humans, he began, your resilience is unexpected. Cease this engagement. Withdraw your forces or face annihilation. Kovac leaned forward. They're asking for a negotiation? Yes, Ion replied, but it's a trick. Every time they communicate, it's to manipulate us into making a mistake. Across the command center, screens displayed Council ships still disorganized in orbit. Yet they weren't retreating, they were cautious. Measuring, probing, testing human responses. Prepare a response, Kovac ordered. And not a standard one. Ion activated the holographic display. We have one option, show them something they won't expect. Not just tactics, not just weapons, strategy as education. Across the globe, technicians worked furiously. Engineers manipulated railgun velocities. Programmers adjusted disruption warheads in real time. The human fleet was no longer responding to the Council. They were anticipating, adapting, and innovating faster than any algorithm could track. In orbit over Mars, a Council dreadnought scanned the sector. Its sensors picked up strange signals, coordinated electronic interference, shield destabilization, and subtle kinetic traps. All calibrated to hit at precise intervals. All mapped from the data humans had collected during the first contact warning. Impossible, one officer hissed. We showed them the way to destroy civilizations. And now, they are using it against us. Below, on Earth, Ion watched the simulations. Human fighters executed maneuvers that exploited every predictable Council behavior. Boarding teams targeted structural weaknesses observed from the Council's previous campaigns. Every move was calculated but adaptive, precise but flexible. Kovac tapped her comm. Deploy the SAR disruptors now. Make sure the resonance is perfect. From Nevada to Beijing, warheads launched with terrifying synchronization. Each was tuned to the Council's shield frequencies. On impact, the Council vessels didn't just take damage, they self-destructed. Council command erupted into chaos. Threxel's eye stalks twitched with stress signals never before recorded. Every vessel lost was a violation of 4 millennia of doctrine. Every failure an indication that humans were rewriting the rules of engagement mid-battle. Back on Earth, the command center's mood shifted. Casualties were high. Cities burned. Millions were lost. But the tactical advantage was overwhelming. The humans weren't just surviving. They were teaching themselves, teaching the galaxy, and turning the Council's methods into a blueprint for resistance. Kovac's voice cut through the hubbub. Prepare broadcast channels. Send everything. Let every species see what we've done. The humans did not conceal a single detail. Every maneuver, every adaptation, every destroyed Council vessel was streamed. The galaxy watched as the supposedly invincible Council fleet bled before human ingenuity. Threxel sat rigidly, staring at the screens. The centuries of victory, the doctrine, the expectation of submission, they were unraveling. Each message, each video, each captured destroyer became a lesson not just for humanity but for every species under Council dominion. "Commander," one officer said quietly, "they are teaching the galaxy how to fight us." Threxel made a rare and almost unheard of decision. Prepare a ceasefire. Open negotiations. His voice was cautious, defensive. "We need to understand this species before it spreads." On Earth, the news arrived almost simultaneously. The Council had requested a truce, but it was far too late to stop what was happening. Across the systems, planets rose in rebellion, armed with lessons extracted from the humans' demonstration. Every species previously oppressed now had the tools to fight back. Ion and Kovac watched in silence as the Council's fleet began retreating. Burn marks and debris floated through orbit, silent testimony to the humans' rapid adaptation. They had survived, but more importantly, they had set a precedent. "Do they understand what we've done?" Kovac asked. "They won't for centuries," Ion replied. "By then it won't matter. Humanity has turned their warning into a universal instruction manual." The final communication was drafted. Not a threat. Not a defiance. Just a simple, precise message. To the Galactic Council. "Thank you for your guidance. We've learned everything we needed to survive, and now everyone else will too. Love Earth." In the Council's flagship, Threxel read the message, his eye stalks freezing mid-motion. No species had ever thanked them. No species had ever taken a warning and transformed it into power. The implications were staggering. In 4,000 years of conquest, the invincibility of the Council had been shattered, not by superior numbers, not by new technology, but by understanding and adaptation. Across the galaxy, signals rippled out. Every captured system, every liberated fleet, every species in rebellion, all had learned the same lesson. The warning had become a blueprint for freedom. And at the center of it all was a small blue planet that refused to be afraid. The Council fleet limped through the void, crippled, disorganized, and confused. Threxel's eye stalks swiveled continuously, trying to interpret the chaos, but no protocol could account for the humans' ingenuity. Each vessel lost, each weapon turned against them, each captured destroyer broadcast across the galaxy, eroded centuries of psychological dominance. On Earth, the command center was a hive of controlled chaos. Cities were rebuilding, factories churned around the clock, and the human military adapted with frightening efficiency. Colonel Park moved from station to station, monitoring every front. Every innovation, every adaptation, every tactical maneuver had been catalogued, shared, and optimized. Humanity was no longer reacting, they were dictating the battle. "Status report," Park barked, eyes glued to the main tactical display. "Council forces are retreating from Luna," Ion replied. "Casualties are severe. Estimated loss, 47% of their fleet in this sector. They're requesting ceasefire communication, again." Park allowed a grim smile. "Good. Let them see exactly what defiance looks like." Across the solar system, human pilots continued to exploit every blind spot, every predictable pattern, every previously observed weakness of the Council fleet. Boarding teams breached ships in minutes, disarming weapons and capturing data. Engineers analyzed enemy tech, producing countermeasures faster than the Council could adapt. And every success, every tactical brilliance was broadcast. The galaxy was watching. In orbit above Mars, Threxel convened what remained of the Council's command staff. Panic buzzed through the room, an emotion alien to their species. They are teaching others. Every species now has access to our tactics. Every weakness we demonstrated, exploited. They are no longer humans alone, they are a standard of resistance across the stars. Meanwhile, Earth sent transmissions to every nearby system. Allies, potential allies, and oppressed species received technical manuals, operational strategies, and combat footage derived from Council weaknesses. Human ingenuity became the universal language of liberation. "Sir, the Kafral and Pentari fleets have responded," Kovac reported. "They're mobilizing immediately using our blueprints. Entire systems previously under Council control are rising." Park nodded. "This was always the goal. Our survival wasn't just for Earth. It was for anyone who needed hope, guidance, and the courage to fight." In the Council flagship, Threxel's translator struggled to convey the horror. "Humans, they've not only survived, they've rewritten the rules. Every species now has the means to challenge the Council. Protocols are failing. Systems are defecting. Our reign is unstable." Threxel's feeding appendages twitched with indecision, a rare physical sign of panic. 4,000 years of invincible doctrine had unraveled in mere months. Across liberated systems, colonies formerly subjugated by the Council rose in coordinated defiance. The hegemony reorganized their hive networks to implement ambushes learned from human tactics. The Caver modified mining equipment into weapons platforms. The Shelltech transformed civilian infrastructure into mobile combat units. Humanity's lessons became a catalyst for galactic revolution. Park observed the holographic map. Red markers indicated Council retreat. Blue markers indicated successful liberation. Green markers showed human assistance and strategic advisory deployment. The galaxy was transforming in real time, a living testament to human ingenuity and resilience. Back on Earth, the final message to the Council was sent one last time. To the Galactic Council. "We appreciate the tactical education you provided. It has proven invaluable not just for survival but for liberation across the galaxy. Every species has learned, adapted, and grown stronger because of your guidance. Thank you. Love Earth." In the Council's capital system, Threxel's fleet arrived battered, demoralized, and depleted. Plans for absolute conquest were abandoned. Protocol dictated regrouping, withdrawal, and recalibration, but the psychological blow was permanent. The humans had achieved what no other species could. They had survived, adapted, and taught the galaxy how to resist. Centuries of domination crumbled in months. The Council's reputation, once invincible, was shattered. Across systems, species that had once been docile now coordinated, armed, and mobilized. Humanity's defiance was not just a spark, it was a galactic fire. 10 years later, the Alliance of Free Worlds convened. Former Council worlds, liberated systems, and allied species met aboard a captured dreadnought now serving as the assembly hall. Colonel Park addressed the gathering. "Our victory began with a warning meant to terrify us," he said. "We transformed it into knowledge, then into action, and finally into a gift for every oppressed species. The Council's greatest weapon became a universal instruction manual for freedom. This alliance is our testament." Species of all shapes and technologies rose, united not by fear but by understanding. The human strategy of turning threats into education and challenges into advantage had created a new galactic order. One built on adaptability, collaboration, and ingenuity. On Earth, the memorials for the fallen honored those lost in the early battles, but the planet itself was no longer the target of fear. It was the center of hope, education, and strategy. Children learned not just history but tactical thinking, creativity, and problem-solving, inspired by the defiance that had saved them. From Earth to the furthest stars, the message was clear. Adversity is a gift, warnings are lessons, and no empire, no matter how ancient or powerful, can crush a species willing to learn, adapt, and fight. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Galactic Council, once the undisputed masters of the galaxy, whispered a single, unthinkable word: thank you. The galaxy had changed forever. The end.